Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, and What's Working is presented by Coastal Alabama Community College. This is the first new show recorded for 2020. The last show of the last show that aired was actually recorded in 2019. So we're putting this one down in 2020. It's the beginning of a new year. And very excited for the direction of this program. I've mentioned this a couple of times on previous broadcasts, but we've got big plans. And thankfully, we have supporters who are helping us build those big plans, one of which is this radio station. The others are the sponsors, and there should be new sponsors coming in online. They like what they hear. They like what's going on. One of the New Year's resolutions that I'm giving for myself on this show and sharing resolutions with people, some would say, oh, that's a good idea. They'll hold you accountable. Other people say, man, you don't ever share your commitments with people, so if you fail, no one knows. There's an argument either way, but I'm telling you. One of my resolutions for this show for the new year, for 2020, is to start having a little bit more fun with it. I think when I began this, I was so worried about making everything right and everything perfect and articulating my words and having all my questions fully prepared and making sure everything went perfectly. And when I look back over the shows from this past year and the year before that I enjoyed the most, and I think they got the biggest reception from listeners, are the ones that we just kind of relaxed and had a little bit of fun with it. The people that we interview on this show have great stories to tell, but it doesn't mean they are absent a sense of humor and can laugh and enjoy the conversation about their business. And we're going to give that a shot this year. Make a mental note, put an asterisk on my notes as I prepare for each show. Hey, Cam, have a little fun with this. This is not life or death. This is not rocket science. Have a little fun with this. The people that are being interviewed are generally jovial and good-willed people, and they enjoy a laugh just like the rest of us do. So my goal for 2020 at this show is have a little bit more fun. Smile a little bit more. Let's tease. Let's have some fun with this, and that's going to be our goal. One of the efforts that I'm going to give for 2020, have a little bit more fun with this. Well, today's guest is a perfect person to begin considering this new idea that I have, this new resolution. L.C. May is the grandson of Clyde May. Clyde May was a bootlegger in the Conecuh Ridge in Alabama, and L.C. is Clyde May's grandson. And they have a distillery, legal, right? No longer a moonshiner, a legal distillery. And I first learned about this distillery. I mean, I don't shop whiskey much. If I'm going to drink a brown water, it's likely going to be a Scotch whiskey, which comes from a trip to Scotland I took a couple of years ago because I learned about making Scotch. We visited a distillery, and I learned about it. When you learn about it, you develop an appreciation for it, and you can taste it and remember the stories of what you learned and remember where you were. And for that reason, I've always reached for Scotch when it's brown water, particularly in the past 10 years. I don't drink much of it, but that's where I go to. So I don't have much knowledge about this whiskey. And it was in the Grand Hotel not long ago at an event where there were people from all over the nation attending the event. And I was invited to give a presentation. And I'll hurry this up. We're coming up to break. But they were presenting this whiskey and this guy, and I was standing there next to another guy, and there was some background music, a little band in the background. And the guy said, oh, this is the representative from Clyde May said, this is distilled in Troy, Alabama. And the guy next to me said, Detroit, what is it doing here? And I said, no, in Troy. He said, Detroit. I said, no, in Troy, Alabama. He said, is there a Detroit, Alabama? And I turned and walked away. Done with that. We're going to have L.C. May on after this break. He's going to talk to us about Clyde May whiskey distilled in Troy, Alabama. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, brought to you by Coastal Alabama Community College, and we will be right back.
Think about how people really see you. The kid at the drive-thru just sees a coffee drinker.
Please pull forward.
Your local barista sees the person who loves a smiley face in their latte.
See you next time.
It's kind of the same way with insurance. Other insurance companies just see a customer, but a State Farm agent sees more. They see you as a neighbor. Your State Farm agent is here to get to know who you really are, so they can help life go right.
Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, in Mobile at 666-1616.
Hey, this is Cam Marston. If sales in your business comes from prospecting to create leads that lead to sales, I want to tell you about Sales Up Coach, a cloud-based system created for the next generation of sales professional. There's a big difference between being busy and being effective. And Sales Up Coach helps salespeople who rely on prospecting uncover which of their activities produce the greatest results. Over time, Sales Up Coach's machine learning hones salespeople's schedule to focus only on activities that generate the most bang for the buck. Your sales team interacts with Sales Up Coach on their smartphone, and sales managers can instantly generate reports to see who is on goal and who may need additional support. Go online and take a look at this new and very powerful sales tool. Go to salesupcoach.com/Cam Marston. Watch your sales team's productivity change.
Is your business growing? Does your existing metal building need an update? Expansion? New roof? With almost 20 years of experience, Mosley Building Systems is the leading metal building contractor along the Gulf Coast. We are your local design build experts. From expansion to new construction or repairs, we can guide you through all aspects of your project. Mosley Building Systems works with each client to fulfill their vision. For more information, go to mosleybuildingsystems.com.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is presented by Coastal Alabama Community College. On the line is Lewis Clyde May. He is the grandson of a bootlegger named Clyde May, now doing it legitimately, of Conecuh Brands. And we're going to learn a lot about this. There's a lot to go down here. But before we ask the first question, LC May, thank you for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
So why don't you first connect us with the company or the bottle or the whiskey's namesake, Clyde May. How are you connected there?
So I am the grandson. So my grandfather, Clyde May, the namesake, his name was Lewis Clyde May, which is also my name. I'm Lewis Clyde May II. Even though I'm the grandson, I'm the second because I'm the only other Lewis Clyde May. He didn't name any of his children after himself other than he named one of his sons Kenneth Lewis May, but I'm the only other Lewis Clyde May, and I'm the national brand ambassador for Clyde May's whiskey and bourbon. And basically my job is to travel around the country in the great state of Alabama and tell his story and explain to people what makes this whiskey unique.
I'm very interested in what makes this whiskey unique. You didn't hear my opening comments. It's before I got you on the line, but I traveled in Scotland a couple years ago and I learned a little bit about what makes scotches unique, and I'm eager to hear your stories on what makes your whiskeys unique. So the Clyde May was a bootlegger, and according to the bio I read online, or the story I read online, he went off to war and came home and immediately started it again. Did he have he was famous in his part of the country for the whiskey he produced. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so he, as a moonshiner, he actually never sold a legal bottle in his life. From 1946, that's when I believe he had his hands in it maybe to a certain degree before he went off to World War II. But in terms of kind of doing it himself and providing that extra comfort and care for his family, that started really after he returned home from World War II, and he did it from 1946 until he died in 1990. And like I said before, he never sold a legal bottle. In fact, in the early 1970s, he was sentenced to 24 months in prison. He served 8 months and got out for good behavior. But the brand that I represent today from a legal standpoint is something that he never imagined that it would become legal. And what I mean by that is he did not make this product with the goal of creating a legal brand. He was just making something that he felt was a way to provide that extra source of income to provide a more comfortable life for his family. And he became notorious for it because of how good he was at it. And it's not just with moonshining, but everything he did, just his personal mindset and beliefs, is that if you do anything, whether it's making moonshine or building birdhouses, it doesn't matter. Anything you produce, it has your name and reputation attached to it. So if you're not making the best possible product, then in his mind, then you were doing a disservice to the customer. And so if he made a batch and he tasted it and something went wrong along the way and he felt like it didn't meet his standard of excellence, he would pour it out before he sold it. And to other moonshiners, that was almost sin, because at the end of the day, you got to make money. But it became more than just money to him. It became part of who he was. And I think that's why he ultimately became as famous as he did, kind of in the local circles of Bullock and Pike County, and even far and beyond the state of Alabama.
So take me through. He died in 1990. Did you ever know him?
I did not, unfortunately. I was born in 95. When that's one of the things that drives me for what, to do what I do is, here I am. I carry on the namesake and legacy of this man that means so much to a family, not just because, the moonshining aspect and the whiskey making aspect, that is very important information for his legacy. But the true parts of his legacy, is what he left behind with his family. Of course, everyone loves their father, everyone loves their grandfather and their friend and their uncle, but he truly changed the lives of so many people. To carry on that legacy is something that I do not take lightly. And it's something that I take a lot of pride in each and every day when I go out and tell his story.
Take me through what happened after 1990 when it was a moonshining operation, to becoming a recognized legal distillery. Was there a recipe that was closely guarded? Was there what was the origination of the legal component of it? How did that begin?
So basically, a majority of what my grandfather sold was unaged White Lightning moonshiner. In other words, it was a clear moonshine.
Yeah.
However, he began experimenting with aging. He was able to get a hold of a charred oak barrel. Normally, it was one barrel at a time. When you're doing something illegally, you don't have the luxury of having a rick house with, 60 barrels in it. So he was aging one barrel at a time. And through trial and error, he discovered that at the very end of his aging process, to assist with the overall smoothness of the product, he would actually add oven-dried apple slices to the barrel, not to flavor it, but just to give it enough of a finish to eliminate some of that spice and burn. And that product was something that he gave to some of his best customers around Christmas. And it became known as his Christmas whiskey, and it got so popular that even if someone bought some in July, they would say, "Hey, I want some of your Christmas whiskey." Well, about 10 or 11 years after he died in 1990, his son, one of his sons, my uncle, Kenny May, he took that kind of Christmas recipe, that whiskey that's finished with a hint of apple, and he created what was then known as Clyde May's Conecuh Ridge whiskey. And it's still the same whiskey today, but we have since, kind of flipped the name because it's more about my grandfather and what he was doing. So it's Clyde May's whiskey, but made by Conecuh Ridge Distillery. And of course, we've expanded our portfolio, but our original product is what we know as an Alabama-style whiskey. So anytime you see the term Alabama style, that term is trademarked to Clyde May's whiskey. And what that means is that it's finished with that hints of apple, not to flavor it, but just to give it that nice, smooth finish.
Interesting. So do you think again, I go back to my trip to Scotland. So much of this flavoring of the Scotch was just almost a mistake. We didn't know that it would taste this way if we left the barrels out near the seashore and get that salty, briny taste. Was this kind of a mistake to give it that apple finish? Was it did he try also peaches and that failed, and strawberries and that failed, and pine needles and that failed?
It was definitely kind of a trial and error experiment. It definitely wasn't an accident. He was looking for something to help give it a smooth finish because at best he was lucky if he could age his product for a year. Now today our youngest product is our rye whiskey is 3 years old, but our whiskeys and bourbons are 4 and 5 years old, and we even have some whiskeys and bourbons that are 11 and 12 years old. So obviously he didn't have the luxury of aging it for as long as we do today. So then he tried different things. He would try to toast various types of wood and different things like that. But it was through, when he discovered that oven dried apple really gave it that unique flavor component and helped smooth it out. He didn't really experiment too much beyond that because he felt like he found what worked the best.
LC May, we're going to take a break and give the advertisers their toehold on the program. And when we come back, I want to talk about the whiskey market and the trends and what you're seeing and where your brand fits in the whiskey market. Folks, you're listening to What's Working. What's Working is brought to you by Coastal Alabama Community College. I've got LC May. LC May is the grandson of what I'm really realizing now, a famous moonshiner. And they're now legit. And we'll be back after these messages. Clyde May lived in a rural area, and to make ends meet, he made moonshine. Opportunities can be scarce in rural areas, and Coastal Alabama Community College is well aware of that. That's why they've partnered with industries in Southwest Alabama to create a world-class, yet homegrown workforce. Companies provide scholarships for students who will go to Coastal Alabama Community College and take advanced technology courses. They then provide paid internships for these students and consider them for available jobs. The company gains a skilled employee. The student has an education and job opportunities, and the community adds to his economic base. It's a win all around. To learn more about this partnership, visit Coastal Alabama Community College's website, coastalalabama.edu. We'll be right back.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stella's. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Investing, connecting, leading, providing. The Community Foundation of South Alabama brings together philanthropic assets to make Southwest Alabama a better place to live, work, and play. We link donors to philanthropy. Working with you, we build communities. Contact us at communityfoundationsa.org.
Coastal Alabama Community College is 3 amazing colleges combined into one incredible institution. And that means we're all together. For more sports, 15 more locations, more friends, more one-on-one time with instructors, way more activities, more courses, a lot more courses, and more success for all of us. Pretty much more of everything. Coastal Alabama Community College is where everyone is. All together! Coastal Alabama Community College. Register today.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Coastal Alabama Community College. On the phone is Lewis Clyde May II, goes by LC May. LC, the whiskey market is, I don't know how to describe it, but there seems to be so many niches out there of whiskeys that have a unique claim to them. There are also these bottles of whiskey, whether it's a marketing tool or legitimate, and I'm thinking right now of Pappy Van Winkle, that really go for some high prices due to the exclusivity and the limited quantities of them. Give me an overview, a 10,000-foot view of the whiskey marketplace today. What's it like, and where is your niche in that marketplace?
Well, basically, the whiskey bourbon market today is as on fire really as it's ever been in the history of bourbon and whiskey. I mean, there have been times where it's been, I believe in the late 1960s and early 70s, we kind of had a whiskey bourbon boom happen in the U.S. But right now, it's not just the category itself, but also a lot of craft distilling, similar to craft beer. Craft spirits is on fire right now. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I was reading not too long ago that back in 2014, there were a little under 100 craft distilleries in the entire United States, and now there's over like 1,500. 6 years later.
Wow.
So it's just really, really on fire and taking off, and you have your big, it's kind of all separated. You have your monster, large volume brands that are just, have always done well, brands like Jack Daniels or Jim Beam. And then you have brands that are a little bit more high end and getting more and more popular due to, how limited it is, to use your example with Pappy Van Winkle, that's something that people are always looking for and fetches very high prices on the secondary market, of course. And then you have the craft distilling, which is kind of the very small, local type of distilling. And where we sit, Clyde Mays, we're too big to be considered craft, but by no means are we large enough to be considered, Jim Beam or Jack Daniels. We're kind of floating in between, still growing. According to Nielsen data, we are actually one of the fastest growing American whiskeys in the United States right now. So
that's great.
We're in all 50 states and a few countries. So my travel or this work has taken me to places like Denali, Alaska, and and all the way down to Miami, Florida, and everywhere in between. So this brand is really taking off because just to be quite honest, really the market at this point in time has kind of gotten oversaturated. To use the craft beer example, every time you go to the store, you see a craft beer you've never seen before. And that's kind of what it's getting like with bourbon and whiskey is, every time I travel to a market, I see a bourbon that I've never seen before. And it can be a market that I have visited previously. I can go there, in January of 2019, and then can go there, next week, January 2020, to the same store, and I'll see 5 bourbons that I did not see the last time I was there. So it's really difficult for a lot of brands to stand out. But fortunately for Clyde Mays, to your point, when you were talking about marketing and history, we have a great story, and that's all fine and good. It's great. I'm proud to tell my grandfather's story, especially because it's a true story. When you're a moonshiner, you live a pretty interesting life. You don't have to make things up. But more important to me than that is, at the end of the day, no matter what your marketing story is, your product has to do the talking for you. If you tell these stories but you don't have a good product, then none of those stories matter. Your product has to do the talking for you. And I think because of the high quality and standards we've set for all of our products across the board, ultimately that combined with my grandfather's legacy and how he was doing those same things is what helped us grow like we have.
So let's talk about, there are so many questions that I've got for you right now. One of which is, one of my buddies who is a beer distributor talks about the saturation of the microbrew, the craft beer, just like you said, and that these large craft breweries that really made a splash nationwide, today their sales are really plummeting because people are going to their local breweries. There's now a local brewery, and if I want to get a beer, I'm going to go find something local. I'm going to go find Fairhope or something like that. Do you foresee the day where there's so many distilleries that I now no longer look at your whiskey because it's not brewed or distilled in Mobile, and instead find one that's distilled in Mobile? Is it going to become a local market?
I think the answer to that question, not that it's going to be a satisfying answer, I think the answer to a certain degree is both yes and no. Yes, because it depends on where you live. You know, if you're in kind of large markets like Mobile or Birmingham or Huntsville, there will be distilleries that will, you know, make a product that I'm sure that local people will grasp onto and have enjoy it. However, on the flip side of that, the difference between craft spirits, which when I say spirits, that can mean anything like vodka or gin, but specifically speaking about bourbon and whiskey, the difference between it and craft beer is that with bourbon, it has to age,
Yeah.
and if you want it to be a straight bourbon, it has to be at least 2 years old. So you're sitting on a lot of inventory and you have to do a lot of forecasting. And if you do not forecast successfully, or you are not successful outside of your little niche market and say Mobile or wherever, then ultimately that's going to put you in a bind to where you either have to start, producing other spirits that can be made in a day like vodka, or you're going to ultimately have to expand your territory and hope to be successful outside of your niche markets.
Yeah. So you've talked a couple of times about the quality of what you produce. Let's go there. Let's reset, and then I want to talk to you about how you define the quality. Here's the reset. You're listening to What's Working, folks. My name is Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Coastal Alabama Community College, and on the line is Lewis Clyde, LC May II. He's the U.S. Ambassador for Conecuh Brands and I'm reading this right now, Whiskey Advocate and Educator for Clyde May's Alabama-style whiskey. So let's begin with this first, LC. The definition of a whiskey versus a bourbon.
So we could have a whole interview of me just talking about the differences between whiskey and bourbon, because there's so much false information out there. So I'll try to get as much as I can without rambling on. But basically the old saying is all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon.
All right.
And what they mean when they say that is bourbon has a set of laws that you have to follow in order for that product to qualify as a bourbon. And if you are making that product and you stray away from one of those laws, whatever that may be, then it becomes a whiskey. So, for example, with our Alabama style whiskey, I mentioned we add that hint of apple. You cannot add flavoring to bourbon and still call it bourbon.
I see.
So once we add that hint of apple, it becomes a whiskey. Now, some brands have gotten around that where, you have the bourbons that are finished in a wine cask and stuff like that. And what they'll say is it's a straight bourbon that's finished with this. That way they can kind of get around that. But ultimately, the most important laws regarding bourbon that you need to know, the most common misconception is that bourbon has to be made in Kentucky. And that is not true. Bourbon has to be made in the United States.
I see. Now that is something that I had believed to be called bourbon. It had to be made in Kentucky. Keep going. This is good.
Yeah. So and I don't fault people for believing that, because over 90% of bourbon produced in the U.S. is produced in Kentucky. So that's why there's a common misconception. However, just to make it even more clear, as of this moment, there is bourbon being distilled in every state in the United States except Hawaii. So literally 49 of the 50 states have a bourbon that's being produced there.
Really?
So that kind of tells you, and like I said, the most bourbon is produced in Kentucky, but it's native to the U.S., not just Kentucky. So that's one important thing that people need to know. Also, another big one is that it has to be made from at least 51% corn, meaning that the mash bill has to be predominantly corn. That's another thing that makes a bourbon. And then another common misconception is that it has to be aged in American white oak barrels. The law actually states that it has to be aged in an oak container. It doesn't even specify barrels, which is why you see some brands that are doing the kind of the quick aging in the mini barrels and stuff like that. Granted, most bourbon is aged in American white oak, but as long as it is oak of some sort and aged properly following the other laws, it can be called a bourbon. And to make it even more complicated, there's a difference between straight bourbon and bourbon, with straight bourbon meaning that it has to be at least 2 years old. And if it's not 2 years old, it's just bourbon. But if it's 2 years or older, it's straight bourbon.
So we got a couple of minutes before the next break. What is Clyde May's Alabama-style whiskey's aging process? Tell me what are your quality standards?
So with the whiskey specifically, we have a whiskey, a bourbon, a rye whiskey. We have several products, but we age all of our products in oak barrels, 53-gallon oak barrels, which is the standard size is 53 gallons. And specifically with our Alabama style, we actually follow all bourbon laws, in terms of age, mash bill, proof that it's distilled and bottled at, all of these things, we follow bourbon law. But when we add that hints of apple, that's when it becomes a whiskey, like I said earlier. But we also have a bourbon that has no hints of apple. But, we do whatever we have to do to meet our standard of excellence, no matter what product we're making. So with the Alabama style whiskey, we believe that adding that hints of apple makes it smoother than other whiskeys. However, in our straight bourbon, where there's no hints of apple, we did everything we could in terms of what proof we bottled it at. It's also non-chill filtered, which is a whole nother discussion in terms of keeping natural flavor in there. We use char 4 barrels, which is the highest char you can use, and that's kind of getting the maximum flavor out of those oak barrels.
LC, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to go to break, and we're going to pick back up on this as soon as we come back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. On the line is LC May, U.S. Ambassador, Conecuh Brands, Clyde May's Alabama-style whiskey. We'll be right back.
The Community Foundation of South Alabama links donors to philanthropy, builds networks across 8 counties, and builds dreams for those in need. Through our donors' gifts, we make investments that enhance our community via initiatives with broad impact. Working with you, we build communities. Contact us at communityfoundationsa.org.
First Protective is a multidimensional financial firm specializing in risk management. We blend all dimensions of financial services, offering our producers diverse products to create multiple revenue streams. If you're a life insurance producer or in the traditional investment business looking to grow your business, we can help. Call me, Jay Stubbs, at 251-604-7024 or find me online at www.firstprotective.com.
Life insurance is one of those subjects that make people want to change the subject rather than admit they probably don't have enough. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I focus on how the benefits of life insurance actually live on by asking people to think in terms of life without having to sell the house insurance, or life without having to give up college insurance. Find out how the benefits of life insurance can live on for your family. Call me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, and get to a better state with State Farm.
I'm Matt Armbruster with Ransom Ministries. We help people in our community that most others have given up on. Please donate your unwanted electronics to Ransom Recycling. We teach life skills, job readiness, and job creation through our electronic recycling program. We take anything with a cord. Find us at ransomministries.com, or you can call us at 251-751-0044.
LC May II. Louis Clyde May II is the grandson of Clyde May, namesake of Clyde May's Alabama-style whiskey. produced in Conecuh Ridge near Troy, Alabama, and really on a growth spurt from what we've learned from the last from this conversation thus far. Elsie, talk to me about marketing this whiskey in a very crowded marketplace. How do you stand out? Is it the flavor profile? Is it the story? And I see your labels. I first saw your whiskey over at the Grand Hotel. The labels are beautiful. I mean, they really eye-catching. What is the secret to growth in the whiskey marketplace today?
I don't know that there is any one secret. I think it is a mixture of so many things, and you have to almost put all of those things in a pot and make sure they all kind of meld together and work well together. So, of course, like we've talked about, you got to have good marketing behind it. And, fortunately, there's a lot of marketing out there, and just being completely honest, a lot of marketing and things you see with various brands, I won't name any specifically, but a lot of them kind of bend the truth, to put it nicely. But with Clyde Mays, we have a very unique story with my grandfather and what he was doing. However, any question anyone wants to ask or anything, we're open and honest about it. And I think that's a big part of success is in today's world of, where everyone can Google answers, or at least think they can Google answers, you have to be open and honest. So when people ask about, our original sourcing or whatever the case may be, we're open and honest about that because we believe that, you're building that connection with the consumer. But to your point as well, something as small, or what some people would consider small, labels, packaging. We are firm believers that your packaging, I can't be everywhere at once as much as I'd like to be. So when you have your bottle on a liquor store, in a liquor store, on a shelf in a liquor store, and there's someone, there's no one there to help you or answer your questions, and you're just staring at the shelf and you're trying to figure out a new whiskey or bourbon to try, a lot of times it can be the packaging that sticks out to you and gets you to try it. However, it's the product inside the bottle that has you coming back to buy that second bottle.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, marketing is huge. Your story is huge. Packaging is huge. All of those are important. But, at the end of the day, the most important thing in my mind and to me, and of course, everyone has their own opinion, but the quality of your product is the most important thing.
So, LC, you've come off the road. You're exhausted. You've been in states. You've lived in cars. You've lived on airplanes, whatever it may be. You're ready for a break, and it's Friday afternoon, and it's 6 p.m., and you're going to sit down in front of a fire, you're going to put your feet up, and you're going to have yourself a Clyde May whiskey. How do you drink it?
Me personally, I prefer to drink my products either neat or on the rocks or with just a single rock ice cube, just depending on the product. I especially like just a single cube because, as you sit and you're having a discussion with someone or you're watching TV or whatever you're doing, as that ice slowly melts and that water is added to the product, it almost opens up the flavor profile even more, depending on the product, of course, and can almost make it like you're drinking a completely different bourbon by midway through you're enjoying the drink. So I normally drink neat or on the rocks. However, and that's a common answer for people in my world, bourbon whiskey drinkers, but a lot of people are not as used to drinking bourbon and whiskey as I am, and you get a lot of ambassadors that almost they can't believe it if someone mixes a whiskey or bourbon with a soda or something like that. They're like, oh, I can't believe it. This product's so great. You should be drinking it neat or on the rocks. And while I do agree with that, I actually have a different opinion. If you paid for the drink or you paid for the bottle, you can drink it however you want to drink it, as long as you're enjoying it and having a good time and, drinking it responsibly. You drink it how you want to drink it.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
I waited tables in New Orleans for a while, and a guy came in regularly and ordered a Courvoisier and orange juice. And I thought, well, you're paying for it, buddy. I'm not sure how that tastes, but it sounds just, it makes my stomach flinch just to hear that. But man, he liked it. He liked that stuff. If we were to go to Troy, where the distillery is located, is there a sign on the side of the road? Do you advertise your presence there? Tell me about the site.
So we're actually breaking ground on our distillery this year. The distillery in Troy is actually a brand new thing we're doing. So to kind of, explain our background a little bit more, legal distillation of spirits didn't occur in Alabama, and when I mean spirits, I mean anything, vodka, whatever, until about 2012, 2013. And so, in fact, my uncle, Kenny May, who started the brand legally, as I mentioned earlier, he spent 2 or 3 years in the late 90s kind of battling the state of Alabama, hoping to get a license to distill in Alabama. He ultimately did not get the chance to do that. But now that it's legal here, we've been making our products in Kentucky. And so now we're bringing it back to Troy. We announced that we are coming to Troy about 2 years ago is when we made our official announcement. And I believe that did cause some confusion. People didn't understand that was just us announcing that we were coming to Troy, and the real work had not even started yet. There are distilleries in Alabama, don't get me wrong, but this will be the first one of this size and magnitude in the state. So we had to do our due diligence, and we are going to be breaking ground on that distillery in Troy, Alabama this year. And when we do, it's going to be on 80 acres of land. It's going to be a distillery, the rick houses, the bottling facility, museum, gift shop, tasting room. There's going to be cabins people can stay in. There's going to be a restaurant. There's even talks about possibly putting a small amphitheater if there's room for it.
Roller coaster?
Not a roller coaster, but everything short of that for sure. But it's going to be a great place for people to come visit, and it's going to be something that not only the city of Troy can be proud of, but the state of Alabama can be proud of.
I want to take the conversation a different way, because this is something that I'm consistently surprised about. I'm a world that I'm completely unaware of, and that's the power of social media, and specifically Instagram, to push a brand out there. We had on last week the Yard Milkshake Bar. They're out of Gulf Shores, they're out of Fairhope, and they've got other locations across the Southeast. And they talk so much about the importance of social media and Instagram and selling their product. People come in knowing what to expect. Now, prior to getting you on the phone, I noticed you have 4,000 Instagram followers. What does Instagram do for the brand?
Well, I believe it or not, I actually also manage our social media. So I take a lot of pride in promoting that as well. But not just Instagram, really all platforms. But Instagram's a really big one because, in my opinion, as much as people talk about Facebook, I think, Instagram is really the one that's setting the world on fire right now. But the importance of social media to me is it is a platform for you to get your product in front of someone without being directly in front of them. And in terms of me not being at a table sitting across from, John Doe or Jane Doe or whoever, Instagram and Facebook can serve as, a advertising model in a sense to educate people on your product and what you're doing and what you're doing well. And that's what they can see and say, hey, I saw this and read this cool story about a guy named Clyde May. I'm going to go out to the liquor store and buy a bottle. And then even, to build on that, for a brand our size, we're not in every liquor store in the United States. We're in a lot of them, but not even close to all of them. So you may have someone that wants to try it and they go in there and they tell a liquor store owner, hey, do you have Clyde Mays? And they say, no, we don't. And then they start educating the liquor store owner, and then they want to get it in. Yeah. So social media can set off a chain reaction of, helping your product grow. So it's not just, going out there and doing whiskey shows and tastings, as important as that stuff is, social media can play a huge role in the growth of any product, not just whiskey, bourbon, but any product at all.
I'm beginning to realize that, and gosh knows it's been in front of me and so many of us forever. I continue to be astounded by the power of it, and I guess I'm just got my head in a little hole here and don't want to look out because it just is a whole nother can of worms that I'm not prepared to open, and I don't even really know how to do it once it's open. But you're one of, I don't know, a half a dozen people that can claim the power of this thing to the social media to influence their brand. We're coming up on the end. I want one final question here. You come from a line of people that were moonshiners, your grandfather rather, and I can't help but believe that there's some power in the family that somewhere around you right now, if you're at home, you got a still running. Is that the truth or not?
Unfortunately, the May family is pretty much retired from the legal moonshining aspect of it. And now, I have been around moonshining my entire life. It was kind of a chain reaction that my grandfather started, but all four of his sons, including my father, dipped their hands in moonshining, some more than others. My father did it for a very long time during most of my life. So I've been around the whiskey making aspect, both legally and illegally, which I think is what helps me have a greater appreciation for what I do today. Because, I was 10 years old and I would be in the woods with my with my father while he was making moonshine. And he was doing it for the same reasons. He was trying to provide a more comfortable life for my sister and I and my mother, of course. But ultimately, it just gets in your blood. It just becomes a part of who you are because they had such a strong connection to their father, Clyde May, and they saw him do it too. And, every day that I do this job and I get, more and more involved in it, it's becoming even more a part of me, both the history, illegally, legally, when I got in this position, I've had people tell me, hey, one day you can be the CEO. And I said, I don't want to be the CEO. I want to be the master distiller.
Yeah.
I'm not a May unless I'm making whiskey. So, so that's just the way I feel about it. And, despite the fact that it's illegal and some people frown upon it, I cannot be more proud to be the grandson and the son of a moonshiner and be a part of that legacy.
There you go.
That's something I take a lot of pride in.
Well, I hope for you that at some point you step out into the woods and get some wood and get a little pot still and do some of this. It's in your blood, man. It's in your blood. You got to do it.
Well, I have, unfortunately, I have news for you. If I ever decide to do it, I would probably have to tell you about it off air. But,
I suspected that. I realized that you realized that we're being broadcast.
Because
but I want to be on the inside circle.
The ABC has their eyes set on the May family, trust me.
That's right. And when they go to your new store in Troy or your new distillery in Troy and they see this well-worn footpath that leads off into the woods to the side, they might follow that footpath and see what's down there. You guys have a reputation.
Well, we do. And, fortunately for us, we're, now that we're doing it legally, they're not hunting us like they used to, but, if they see that footpath, they're going to go to looking, like you said. So you just got to make sure you don't leave that foot trail for them or, keep it moving or keep it hid well enough to where no one can find it.
We're listening to the advice of a veteran moonshiner here, folks. This is the Dukes of Hazzard in Troy, Alabama right now. Lewis Clyde May II is the grandson of Clyde May, and he is the U.S. brand ambassador for Clyde May's Alabama-style whiskey. LC, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for your time, and I hope you learned and your listeners learned a little bit more about whiskey and bourbon and the true aspects of what makes Clyde May, my grandfather, unique.
I think so. I can't wait to try it the next time I get a chance with this story in mind. Take care. Folks, you're listening to What's Working, brought to you by Coastal Alabama Community College. I'll be right back with final comments. We highlighted a lot of great things going on at Coastal Alabama Community College, but this just might be the best yet. It's a story of people taking care of people. Bryce Connell is a student at the Bay Minette campus and loves to fish. Some of his favorite memories are fishing with his father. When Bryce was 17, he lost his left arm in an accident. And 2 years to the day later, his father died. After hearing about Bryce's loss, his classmates decided to do something to show their love. They raised money throughout the semester and purchased a special fishing rod Bryce could use with one arm. Weather's kept Bryce from going fishing with his new rod, but he is practicing his cast at home. And Bryce, we hope you land a big one with that rod. Our thoughts are with you, pal. We'll be back after this break.
I'm Matt Armbruster with Ransom Ministries. We help people in our community that most others have given up on. Please donate your unwanted electronics to Ransom Recycling. We teach life skills, job readiness, and job creation through our electronic recycling program. We take anything with a cord. Find us at ransomministries.com or you can call us at 251-751-0044.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stella's. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Hi there, I'm Josh Knoll with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. As your business grows and you accumulate wealth, planning to protect your assets becomes more and more important. I work with individuals and business owners throughout Baldwin County to help them protect their prosperity. Call me today at 251-327-2124 or find us at gulfcoastfa.com.
Securities offered through Pro Equities, member FINRA, SIPC. I want to thank L.C. May for his time on the phone with me today, learning about their bourbon, their entrepreneurial approach to a spirit that will soon be distilled in the state of Alabama. I thought it was distilled here already, but it's on its way, and that'll be great. I think that's diversity and a variety of options is always better. And I know this about whiskey and bourbon and Scotch drinkers. They're very particular. They like their stuff, and they find stuff that they... when they find it and they like it, they tend to go back. However, one of the things I learned from my buddy that I referenced a little bit earlier about craft beer is that craft beer drinkers, and I used to be one of these things till I looked down and saw an inner tube around my waist and thought maybe I should back off this stuff. They like to shop. He used a different term, but they like to pick different things and try different things on a regular basis. They like to taste. They like to explore. Like a wine drinker who collects wine. They find things that they like, but they're always trying something different. And I can't help but wonder if the whiskey market will someday be the same, where there's so many options that are all within a certain price range that rather than be loyal, you're always trying. You know what you can go to, but you're always trying new things. For LC May, I hope he finds a loyal customer base, and I'm certainly going to give it a try the next time I'm by one of the ABC stores. Pick one up for my shelf and invite my friends to drink it with me when that time comes. Very curious. All right, we're going to wrap it up this week. I want to thank John Thompson. He's the show's producer. His company's Ion Digital, and they do a great job. And I want to thank Kristen Ogden for helping organize these interviews and getting everybody on the schedule together to make these things happen. They take an enormous weight off my shoulders for what they do. We will have another show next week, everybody. Have a wonderful week. This is Cam Marston, What's Working, brought to you by Coastal Alabama Community College.